All right. I think we can start with the webinar today. It's really exciting. So I'm Johan from Zivu. Very happy that everyone is joining today. And basically, what we'll do is we'll have an opportunity to dive into all kinds of questions about preparing for the high season. And it's right around the corner. So I guess it's a really good timing to do this now. We have a great panel, lots of experience coming together here that we can hear from. And basically, we'll have the opportunity to, at the end, also ask questions. If you have questions along the way, you can share them in the chat, and then we'll order them, and hopefully we'll be able to answer most of your questions. But we'll see how that goes. And what we'll start off with is just a short introduction from each of the panelists. Then we'll have several sections. One is about pricing. One is about operations, and one is about the bigger picture for planning. So very excited and very happy that we can do this today. So we have Alessandro, Corinne, and Naeem. And I would like to ask each one of you maybe to give a short introduction for about 2 minutes, and then we can dive into the questions. Maybe Alessandro would like to start.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation, for the opportunity. My name is Alessandro. I'm a solution consultant manager at PriceLabs for Europe. A solution consultant is an hybrid role between a sales role and account management role, in the sense that we take our customer from the beginning of the cycle and we stay with them for all the journey with PriceLabs. So it's not that we sell the software and then we pass to somebody else, but we keep staying with the customers. My background is in vacation rentals. I worked in this industry since about 15 years. I used to be a property manager, managing a few listings here in Barcelona, in Spain, where I'm based. Later, I worked for two OTAs, one property management system. And during that time, while I was talking with the multitudes of property manager daily, I realized that the pricing is a very important aspect of the management. That it's where I proposed myself to PriceLabs, and then it's when I started to work with them. PriceLabs is a revenue management tool. We like to call us this way, not only a pricing tool, because it's a tool that offers the possibility to apply decisions. We offer market data, we offer analytics in relation to your portfolio. So it's not only pricing, but it's also like a tool to make a decision on your general trade. Company that is being founded in Chicago about 11 years ago. It comes from the idea of our two founders. One of them was working for a flight company doing revenue. The other one was having a room, renting it in Airbnb. So they put things together and they started producing the software. The software was given for a few years for free, but after, Airbnb and the industry took off, so we have seen an exponential growth in the recent years. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's really great. Corinne, would you like to go next?
Sure. Yeah. My name's Corinne Oki. I'm the VP of Community and Engagement here at Breezeway. I have also been in this industry for quite some time. I joined in 2008 at a small startup called Flipkey. We were ultimately acquired by TripAdvisor, and we sort of brought the idea of online guest reviews to the industry. That was something that wasn't happening a lot at that time. I was there for about 7 years, and then I took a little break from our industry for about a year and a half, and was approached by the founder of our company, Jeremy, who was also a founder of Flipkey, as he was building Breezeway. And I've been here now for a little over 8 years. So I've had the opportunity to wear a lot of hats, from sales to client success. I was doing some early billing, all kinds of good stuff. And now I'm lucky enough, I oversee our community. And so that means, engaging with our clients and making sure that there's really great opportunities for them to interact and learn from one another, and oversee also all of our live events that we go to and webinars and things. So I'm really excited about that. If you're not familiar with Breezeway, we are an operations and guest experience tool. And so we really want to make it easy for you to not only deliver 5-star experiences for your guests through standardization and sort of like process and cleaning checklists and being able to easily report maintenance tasks and things like that. But then also sort of facilitate the same software solution to help you engage with those guests as they're arriving and are there in-house and have additional operational needs that come up. So really excited to be here and be a partner with Zeevou. And so excited to have this conversation with you all.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That's a great introduction. And Naeem?
Hi, everyone. This is Naeem from Zeevou. I started Zeevou about 7, 8 years ago as an internal tool for my own help to management business in the UK. And as the business grew, we started having various operational challenges, marketing challenges, and we cycled through endless PMSs and channel managers, I think 6 or 7 different ones. Couldn't get what we really needed to run the business. So I started building some software in-house. And then at some point, other operators found out about it and they asked when they could have access. And so basically Zeevou was born, and we sort of launched about 5 years ago, and then fairly quickly figured out that the user interface wasn't where it should be to be able to and give good experience to our users. So we stopped sales and marketing pretty much, and for the last 3.5 years, we've been focused on revamping the whole user interface, which we finished at the beginning of this year. And we've got a lot of exciting changes coming up and going forward. So very happy to be in touch with all of you. And if anyone hasn't had a demo of Zeevou, feel free to take a look. We do free websites, absolutely free, no commission, no upfront payments, no ongoing payments. And we have various other tools that are paid.
Great. Wonderful. So I'm very excited to dive into this. So thank you all for this introduction. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with some initial questions. We're going to open it up, and then we're going to dive into some specific domains, if you could say it like that. So pricing strategy, operational readiness, and then also the bigger picture of planning. But the first question is really, I'm going to put it in the middle of the group, is the following. It says, given the high stakes of high season, what's the most critical decision property managers need to make right now to set themselves up for success? And what's often overlooked in this initial phase of planning? So who would like to start?
Well, we won't all jump at once, but I'll kick it off. I think, one of the things that's super important is sort of thinking about not only where you are today, but where you plan to go and how you're going to be able to like operate at scale, whether that's 6 units, whether that's 60 units, whether that's 1 unit, right? What does that actually look like? And how are you going to run your business in an effective way that still allows you, maybe for you to have a life, right, outside of running your property management and rental business. And so I think, really big sort of critical decision for folks is really locking in the systems and the tools and like how they're going to drive that reliable experience for their guests. And I think, when I say for their guests, I do actually mean for their guests, but I think that also incorporates their team. And so whether that's an internal staff or whether that's contract cleaners or a contract handyman or whomever you use to sort of run your business, it's also making sure that those folks have the tools and that they're empowered when they're out doing their work to be successful. Because, sometimes we have these really great things that focus on the guest journey and the guest communication experience, and they have this amazing experience until they walk into a house and the cleaner is still there and the cleaner just doesn't know how to interact with that guest. And so, I think something that's overlooked is making sure that you're empowering that team to do their job effectively, communicating it back to you, and also to make sure that they're, sort of upholding the level of expectations that your guests have come to expect from their communication with you.
I really like that, like really thinking also about empowerment of the team, because in the end, it's really a team working together. That's really interesting. Anyone else would like to say something about that?
Yeah, I like saying that in high season, we all expect to have great results compared to low season, for example. But I think when and how those results are coming, it's very crucial. So maybe later we can see what will be our approach to how to understand how to approach the high season on a pricing perspective.
Right.
Yeah, I'd say if people are looking at staffing, especially at scale, then make sure that you factor in both the increase in staffing requirements to handle your existing units. But if you're growing at the same time, then obviously you have to count with a lot more staff requirement to handle both the growth in unit count and the growth in seasonality.
Very interesting. And then maybe connected to this, before we go into pricing, so beyond the familiar, what's genuinely new or unexpected in high season preparations this year, either a challenge or an opportunity? So we're really looking into maybe something new or unexpected that would be good really to think of. Either a challenge or an opportunity.
Right on.
Corinne?
I don't know that I'm going to say this is really new or unexpected. I just think that we are continuing to see as an industry the expectation of the guests heighten. And I think that that's exacerbated really significantly during high season. And so, it's a lot to ask of people to deliver incredible hospitality while fixing a broken toilet and making sure that somebody can get in and making sure that a property is clean. And so I think it's just really focusing on that like heightened expectation of the guest and how you can meet that. And I think that comes not only from how you prepare the property, but also in how you communicate with them, right? People aren't looking for like the generic like welcome emails, right? They want more personalized sort of tailored messages. And so I think that when folks are kind of thinking through that, that's a big one. And it's just sort of a little bit of a mind shift from how am I going to react to how am I going to like proactively set myself up for success when things are so tight during high season.
Right. So it's particularly also those expectations that are there and really being prepared for that. Yeah. Anyone else before we go into pricing?
I mean, I say pricing is probably the one thing to watch out for. And last year, this summer, for a lot of areas, it wasn't as expected. It wasn't really high season. And so just keep a close eye and making sure you're not overpricing things and staying empty. We can cover, I'm sure Alessandro will chip in more on that as we go along.
Right. So I guess it's a good timing. We can move into pricing right now. So I'm gonna ask Alessandro if he could lead the way with this part, but of course later on others can chime in. So with pricing, beyond simply raising rates, what are some advanced dynamic pricing strategies that property managers should be implementing now to maximize revenue during the high season?
Yeah. So I would say would be very crucial, important to have the ability of monitoring how the market is pacing, right? What's the rhythm of the market? How fast and how slow the market is getting booked in every specific day. What's our definition of market? Our definition of market, it's a couple of hundreds of units around yours, right? We don't want to go in the next neighborhood. We want to stay hyper localized. If we have listings in front of the sea, we don't want to go up on the hill. We want to stay there as a market definition because the behavior can change. So having the ability of monitoring how the market is pacing, for example, compared to last year, it's very helpful. Why? To give an example. For example, I know today for the August 15th, the market is booked 50%. Already, we have already occupancy 50% for August 15th. Last year today, for August 15th, there was 30% occupancy already. So we are pacing ahead 20%. What that means? That means that we could potentially try to get a little bit more income, try to fluctuate a little bit higher with the pricing because the behavior of the market, it's more prominent bookings. It's doing more booking than last year, so we can aspire to get something more. On the opposite side, if the market is pacing behind last year, we should anticipate our competitors and maybe decrease the pricing before them. So we can anticipate them and get the. So getting an overview of how the market is pacing will be very beneficial, right? And then alongside with this, applying all your strategies relating to booking window in relation to your market. For example, far out premiums. What is a far out premium? It's a premium factor, for example, plus 20% for every booking that comes 90 days out, right? But why we apply that factor? Because we think that we still have some time to get to the booking. So we think a little bit differently from the air company, right? We try to get a little bit higher ADR, average daily rate, a bit higher, if we still have long time before the, right? With flights, if you book in advance, normally you're cheap. But also, this is the market that teaches you, because you can also apply a far out factor, but if nobody books, then it's useless, right? So it's the market that is teaching you if they make sense or not. Same for last minute discount. For example, I had clients here in Barcelona that are having their units close to the airport, and they're only getting last minute. They're only getting canceled flight. They get overbooking and things like that. So they were asking, Alessandro, should I apply last minute discount? We were like, Not sure. I don't think so, because if you only get last minutes, why discounting them? Base your price on last minutes, and then maybe you discount far out. So it's always good to have an overview of what is happening in your market. Same for the length of stay, right? The minimum stay strategy. Should I work 3 nights, 4 nights? How is my market behaving in terms of length of stay for the summer? Is getting longer booking, shorter booking the last year, how I was applying my minimum stay strategy last year, and how I can do them this year in relation to the market. Also, another aspect that is coming up now will be having the ability to monitor the same in relation to the hotels industry as well a little bit, right? Because, for example, when I travel with my family, we prioritize short-term rental to support the industry. But if there is like a good hotel with a good, quality cost, we might go to the hotel. So the guests, they might also opt for the hotel. So having an overview of what's happening in the hotel industry will be also helpful. And also always include your internal occupancy, meaning you can have a price of 100, then the market is pacing behind for that day. So maybe I play 90, but maybe my portfolio, it's almost fully booked. So let's go to 95. So we always suggest a collection of factors to apply like more informative price on every specific day. As last, I always suggest obviously to work with all the orphan gap filling, all the minimum stay strategies to optimize, the occupancy. Meaning you can have, for example, a minimum stay 3-4 nights, but if there is a gap in between the booking, try always to open that gap and maybe increase the pricing for that gap to be open in order to maximize occupancy. For example, many people are not selling one night, right? So one night it's too low to get the booking. But maybe if I get the same amount of the 2 nights that I have as a minimum, I might be able to sell it anyway, right? So try to make it dynamic and try to adapt it to the market behavior. This will be
Well,
on
Alessandro.
this topic.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, you listed out a few very interesting pricing strategies. And I guess it's also, if you could maybe quickly, right, if you would have to focus on maybe 2 or 3, which one would you say like are the most important ones that everyone should really think of right now?
Yeah, I think the dynamic minimum stays are super helpful. So not only saying, okay, my minimum stay is 3 nights. On 3 nights minimum stay. No, I think that's limiting in the sense you can have a minimum stay 3 as your the minimum stay you always use, but maybe say, okay, for the next 2 weeks, minimum stay 2. Giving more flexibility last minute, always also to the minimum stay rules. Or 90 days out, minimum stay 4, right? And that's progressively going once the days are progressively. So from tomorrow will be 2 weeks from tomorrow. So some sort of dynamicity on it, right? You want to be more flexible last minute and want to be more strict far out, because we all like longer bookings, right? But maybe the market not allowing us to get them last minute and in the middle term. So I would say that dynamic minimum stays are very, very important.
Right, right. Okay, and then so another question related to pricing is, what trends or booking behaviors are you seeing for this year's high season that managers should be aware of? And how should these insights influence their dynamic pricing adjustments right now?
Yeah. So what we are seeing now, and I include myself in this, talking to property manager, is that there are always more savvy consumer behavior, meaning guests are now like benchmarking full on the listings, right? So I go to this listing in one OTA, I'm going to find the same in the other OTA. And if I can, I go and get to the direct website, for example, right? So you should, that's also to be considered, in the sense that if you want to overcome this, you might be focusing on pricing parity, right? Trying to show the same price in all the OTA, unless your strategy wants you to powerize one OTA and not the other, or your direct website, for example. So what we see that many guests are actually looking for listings, not only booking on what platform, and going and see where they get the best deal. Another behavior that you are looking at, it's shorter booking windows in general. So we've been seeing also in the UK market that tendentially the booking window are a bit shorter. So you should basically adapt your, again, last minute and far out strategy.
Great, great. And any of the other ones that would like to also maybe share something from their experience regarding pricing? I think someone just started chiming in. Someone else.
It's not just the pricing itself, but also the minimum stay management is quite important. And especially given that you're getting more and more last minute bookings, the lead time is a lot shorter than it was, say, before COVID. It's not necessarily specific just for this high season, but in recent years, people are booking more and more last minute, which means you also need to make sure that you have good availability. Yes, longer bookings are less likely to book last minute. So you're not that likely to get a 2-week or 3-week or 2-month booking and 2 days before, but it does happen. And if you then got a one night booking a weekend, and that is blocking out the ability for you to take the longer term, more profitable booking, then you're essentially losing out. So I always recommend setting up cascading length of stay requirements. So say if you're 3 months out, you've got a longer stay, and as you get closer, you shorten that to allow you to still take more profitable things.
Great, great. Yeah, these are some wonderful insights that we can use for our pricing strategies. I also see some questions coming in. This is really great. Please, if you have any questions, just share them in the chat, and then hopefully at the end we'll be able to answer some of them. So we're going to wrap this up just due to time. Again, if there's any questions that we can later answer, we'll hopefully be able to dive into those. We'll go into operational readiness right now, and for this one, I'm going to ask Corinne to lead the way. The first question is, what are the absolute non-negotiables for property businesses to have in place operationally before high season hits?
How much time did you say we have? No, I'm just kidding. You know,
I know it's a big one.
Yeah, I think this is going to be probably relatively broad, but I definitely think, when we think about what are our I talked about this earlier, but like, what are our processes? Like, what are our cleaners doing when they go into a property? Because, some people will say, like, oh, I've had the same cleaner. They've been cleaning this property for, for the last 3 years, and they know exactly what to do. But like, what happens if that person gets sick? Right? What are the quirks of that property that they may not, that someone who's going into a property for the first time may not know about? What are your brand standards that you expect and sort of make promises to your guests as they book with you that you're going to deliver to them? So really standardizing the process, whether it's your cleaning checklists or how you handle maintenance issues, and having like clear, repeatable things that you can do, I think are really, really important, because that's gonna reduce the chance for error, but also drive consistency. I also think that, like, we talked about what happens when a cleaner is sick, right? Having a really strong like team of folks that you can call on. So having the right people in the right spots within your organization, or within sort of your environment of how you operate your rental is also really useful, because I think the more that we can clearly communicate and set the team up to be successful when they're out in the field, the better guest experience they have, and then, the better reviews that you guys ultimately end up receiving. I also think one thing that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I think that's very much related. I think also to the second question, which is if a property manager could only focus on 2-3 critical areas to ensure guest satisfaction and team sanity during peak demand, what would they be? And you would say like the ones you just mentioned are like some of the critical ones, right? That really are important to focus on.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can't skip in high season, right? When you have more and more turnover in those properties, like, we can't just be like, "Oh, we'll do the HVAC later," right? Like, those are the things that'll bite you, because then an issue comes up, right? And so I think the other thing that I would say is, like, having a really strong way that you react when things do go wrong is also super important. And it seems silly, but like, making sure that you're proactively giving the guests the information they need to try to help themselves. Everybody jokes that like our guests don't read when they're on vacation, but like, if we at least provide them the information, some of them will, right? Some of them will try to troubleshoot before they call or text you. So giving clear instructions, making sure they know the Wi-Fi. We were just in a rental property this weekend, and there were like 10 light switches. So every time we were trying to turn one on, it's like, well, which light is which? So, it could be something as simple as like labeling those, right? So you're not getting guest frustrated. You're not creating situations where guests are more frustrated. And that all comes to sort of how you operate those properties.
Right, right. That's really interesting, actually. And then, so connected to that, so how can technology like Breezeway help property managers scale their operations during high season without sacrificing guest experience or burning out their teams? And I think it's very much related to what you just were mentioning about like, team empowerment and these kinds of things.
It is, and it's also about, giving structure, right? So one of the things that we do at Breezeway, right, is we're automating your schedules. We're automating the way that people receive their work and that they know what they need to do. And instead of somebody texting you to say, "I'm headed to do a clean," you can just see that they started a clean. So, I would say sort of in three areas, right? We're helping to automate the task distribution and communication by assigning the work based off of the reservations that you have and any reservation changes, and that work is tailored to the specific property that somebody is going in. So that's going to make sure that you're doing a little less of that like manual like chaos on the day before or the day of check in rather. And then also like having some like centralized visibility, right? If you do manage, if you manage one or two properties, it's probably a little less relevant. But if you're managing, three, four, five or more properties, you need to sort of understand what's going on. And is there anything that's going to happen that's going to create friction for that guest? So, making sure that you have that visibility into like what's working, who's done, what work is completed, are there any issues that have been reported, and sort of having that clear dashboard, which you get within our platform is really important. And then I think, the other one is just accountability. It's great for the cleaner or the tech who's out doing something. It's great for you. And we had recently a guest had filed for a refund of some sort because they said that something wasn't done. And the manager was actually able to share with Airbnb their time-stamped reports of the clean and to see when these photos were taken, how they were done, what work had been done in that unit. And the manager actually won that, and the guest did not get the refund. So, you're driving accountability to make sure you set the right experience for your guests, but it also covers you when something goes in the wrong direction.
Wow, that's an interesting case. So it's even like with very practical things like refunds, that if you can keep track of things, you can log things into the system. It can really help you out in different kinds of situations.
It's
Yeah, please continue.
well, I was just gonna say, I don't think that tech replaces, right? This is a big part of the business where like tech can't replace the human, but it's really just making sure that hospitality is getting delivered in a more like effective way.
Right, right. And so maybe others, like in connection to this, I saw Naeem, you wanted to share something too?
And obviously, operational challenges are one of the big ones, like cleaning maintenance. The other ones I'd say are also fairly useful to automate properly are an online check-in system. So where regardless of where your bookings come from, you get everyone to go through a streamlined process of collecting the data, getting a real email address, preferred marketing, upselling things like early check-ins and late checkouts to help maximize your earnings, and then getting details on additional guests, making sure that they've paid, the security deposit is sorted, and the rental agreement's been signed, and ensuring that once the booking is, as we call it, a Zeewood check-in ready, the check-in instructions then send out automatically. So sounds easy, but it's usually a lot of hassle to go back and forth with the guests to make sure they've submitted this, they're doing the selfie, upload their passport, whatever it is that we might want to collect from people, and then having the automated communications tie in with that, I think is quite powerful. And the other thing is things like owner segments, or as we call them in Zeegle monthly coffee reports, automating those so you don't have to sit at the end of the month and start pulling up figures, looking at every booking, checking what expenses you had, uh, you know, getting invoices off of WhatsApp and emails and how amongst where they're all sitting. So using Zeeble, you can add every expense into the system as you're incurring it and assign it to the right property, and all the income and expenses related to the income, like pay fees and channel commissions and so on, are automatically added in. So when you get to the end of the month, literally just look at your monthly profit report and say, fine, I'm happy with this, publish it to the owner so they can see it, and send them the payout. And these are really sort of admin bits that you don't want to be dealing with when you've got the potential to be focusing on sales and marketing and servicing your guests in high season.
Wonderful. Yeah, these are some great examples. The comment earlier, it's really to empower. It's not that it replaces everything, but really anything that can help efficiency, improve operations. That's what technology can be used for. So, yeah, I mean, we don't have that much time, so we already have to go to the next part. But I think this pricing and operation, I think we could have like two webinars for at least 2-3 hours, but we'll have to continue to the next one. So now we're going to go into the big picture planning. For this part, I'm going to ask Naeem to take the lead. And the first question is, a great high season means more than full calendars. It means building a more stable business too. What smart moves can property managers make to diversify their revenue streams during this peak time? And what data should they watch to see the full value of these extra earnings?
I mean, there's, I'd say, short-term and long-term stuff that you can do. So in the short term, you can obviously upsell things to guests to make more money there and then. Within Zevo, the online checking system, but also in the direct booking system, we've got the option for you to upsell things like taxi shuttles to the airport or a nice basket with goodies on arrival or whatever it is that you might think that is of interest for your guests. The other thing is to actually look at reducing your costs. So your channel commissions is probably one of the biggest costs that any accommodation booking has. Within the high season where there's more demand, you can afford to try and sell more direct, especially on peak dates. You can try and block out the channels if you think there's enough demand out there to take bookings direct. Again, Zevo connects to things like Google Vacation Rentals or Google Hotels, which allows you to drive more and more direct traffic and reduce your acquisition costs for those bookings. At the same time, I'd also say forward planning is very important. So if you're trying to reduce your costs in the long term and maximize your earnings, then you need to really be collecting the email addresses for all your guests. We're staying with you so you can remarket to them in the future. Make sure to get GDPR compliant marketing consent opt-in to whatever tool you're using to do that. And once you've got that, then obviously start type marketing. Also, don't forget about your social media and so on. So I think it's important. Yes, diversifying revenue streams is important, as I mentioned, upsells. But also the other thing is to make sure that long term you're building more stable business by building your brand, by building that relationship with the guests, and ensuring that they come back directly in the future. Something else that we don't currently have available, and I'm not aware of any tech that's automating this out there, that we're working on is allowing you to create an additional revenue stream by cross-selling accommodation from other hosts on Zevo. So if you're not already on Zevo, please do take the time to sign up to our free plan. And hopefully later this year, we'll have the ability for you to both resell your accommodation through any other Zevo host, but also to resell any other Zevo host accommodation through your own website or by placing the booking in the system if you're got a guest that you're talking to, and once you find it, stay somewhere else where we have a host who's got a bit of accommodation. Great. And that's very we're asking, and we should watch out and to track that, I guess. If you're looking at revenue stream diversification, then you'd be looking at how much you've sold as upsells for each booking or how much you've sold risk. Because the type of upsell that you try to push those, improve the marketing of those upsells or look for other similar upsells that people might be interested in. You could also look at what upsells are working in other properties and see if you can find some good partnerships for your units elsewhere. Airbnb services just been launched recently, which is basically replicating what we've had there for a long time, except for in our case, you can control what you're selling. You can set those partnerships up in a way that also earns you some money. And if you're looking at reselling other people's accommodation, I guess they have to watch out for when you've got that available is the photo volume commissions that you make by passing you booking on the service.
Right, great. So just to connect also to that, so beyond maximizing conversion rates, how can property managers ensure these integrated upsells offer genuinely enhance the guest experience and feel like a value add rather than just an intrusive sales pitch, especially during the high pressure high season?
And is this me again, or did I talk enough in the first place? I mean, you could say it with upsells, the important thing is to make sure they see the right information at the right point. So you could mention some of the upsells available on your listing description, but more importantly, at the point that they are doing their online check-in or they're booking through direct booking, and it's important to flag what you have available. They could be thinking about booking at that moment, right? So if they're going through direct booking through your website, then it might be that except for the accommodation, they'll need a rental car, they'll need a taxi collection, or as Connie mentions, you can team up with a local small catering business that's specialist homemade local food delivered. So you have to think about where you time offering these things to your guests and make sure that it's not something that just hits the guests as something you're trying to sell more, but something that's genuinely useful to them. And of course, there's nothing like getting feedback from people who are going through that process, try and refine that.
Right. All right, great. So we've gone to the three core parts of the webinar. So now I'm going to invite everyone to come together again. And the first question is, what's one counterintuitive piece of advice each of you would give property managers to stop doing or prioritizing this high season that most managers might think is essential, but actually hinders success or creates unnecessary stress? So this could be across like operation management or pricing or planning. What are perhaps things that maybe things that we might be implementing, but actually they really can hinder and they can create some problems or unnecessary stress.
Can I take this one? So I was thinking, uh, speak about a little bit about the KPIs, about the in your revenue management, right? With how to observe the results. Very useful for high season, also for low season, obviously. But this comes from the experience where many property managers are telling me, Alessandro, my occupancy it's lower than my competitor. And I ask, yeah, but what's your average daily rate? What's the rate that you've been selling? I know your occupancy is lower, but maybe you get higher price. Or Alessandro, my ADR, my average daily rate is lower than my neighbor. But what's your occupancy? Right. So there is always these those two indicators that everybody's looking at, like occupancy and ADR. But we think that there is a third indicator that would be, maybe familiar for some, less for others. And it's called RevPAR, right? This is coming from the hotel industry. It's basically you obtain this number, taking the occupancy rate and multiplicating it for the average daily rate. So you will have only one single indicator and a single number, right? For example, your ADR is 100, your average daily rate is 100, but your occupancy is 50%, so your RevPAR will be 50, right? So if you look at this number and you see how it modifies in time, you will be able to have a clear overview of how your listing is going. Because if you only look at the ADR, you will never know the occupancy. If you look at the occupancy, you will never know the ADR. So if you look at the RevPAR, you have in one single number, both indicators. And that will be helpful for you to guess how you're actually going in relation to your market, your competitor. So
Right. So it's good to keep in mind there's actually three, not only two, but there's a third indicator that's very key when it comes to planning and
yeah,
pricing.
it's an indicator. If you look at the number by itself, it doesn't tell you much. But if you see how it modifies across time, then it's really helpful to understand how you're actually going. Because if your RevPAR increases, then it's because the performances of your the revenue are actually increasing, right? If your occupancy is increasing, you never know if your revenue is increasing because you might be underselling. So,
Right.
With that indicator would be good, would be helpful.
Good. So anything else? Anything that could create unnecessary stress as you're trying to prepare for the high season?
I think I would just say,
Lauren? Yeah.
yeah, I think, I would say like, and this probably sounds counterintuitive coming from me based off of what we do, but I think it's, but I'm going to say it anyway, because here we go. Right. It's
Go
for stop. I would encourage people to stop, obsessing on perfection at every touch point, right? Like it's not about making sure that there's never a typo. We want to avoid those things wherever we can, right? Or that something isn't perfectly aligned. But I think it's really about like, how can we be consistent? How do we recover when things go wrong? Because we have to have that process no matter how well you clean a property, no matter how well you inspect that property, and you think that everything is working, the smoke alarm starts going off in the middle of the night. And there was no way for you to have known that. You checked it and it didn't, there wasn't an issue, or you replaced the batteries last month, whatever the case is. It's about how we handle the things. And so, yes, we want to aim for incredible stays for our guests, but if we are only fixated on that and it's draining for our team, it's then demoralizing when something does go wrong. And so just make sure that you've got, like I said at the beginning, you have the systems in place to do the right thing from the start, and you have the process in place to react when something goes wrong. Because I hate to break it to everybody, but we all know, right? It's something is going to go wrong. So we just want to avoid that. But that's, I think, one thing that would, probably eliminate some unnecessary stress.
That's a great tip.
Mine would
Name?
relationship with OTAs. So OTAs are definitely required to get traffic in and make sure that you're not chasing, just listing on more and more websites. Probably good rule of thumb is you want to be on 5, maximum 10 places. You don't want to be on too few because you want to get enough people in, but you still don't want to be spending all your time managing all these listings and dealing with updating content here and there if something changes. And Ezebu can help up with that through automated content updates and so on. But still, it is a hassle dealing with too many agencies. And at the same time, bear in mind that you want to really be building core of your business, which is direct bookings and the relationship with those guys. So if you're catching the fish to the team, make sure you fry it and have some keepers for the future.
Great, great. And then to build on that, so let's talk about the nexus of pricing and operations. Can each of you provide a specific real-world example of where a disconnect or lack of alignment between pricing decisions and operational capacity, or vice versa, led to significant problems, maybe missed revenue or guest dissatisfaction during a high season? Maybe this one is a bit more, this is a tougher question. This is bringing it all together.
I think, I think from my perspective, one of the things we see a lot of our clients doing is offering gap nights, right? So there's a open night and they're going to fill it by a discounted rate. And I think I would say, when we sort of think about like where pricing and ops sort of play together is the $100 you're going to get from that additional night worth the potential strain on your operations team? So maybe just having like a consistent communication between those teams or those sort of mindsets that you're operating through. Because if you fill a night or you give somebody an early, you use an upsell for early check-in, that's putting operational strain on your team. And in the high season, that strain is already up here and we want to avoid getting it even higher. So I would just, that would be my advice or example that I would share.
Yeah, it's actually what also I wanted to mention relating to the orphan gap night. So the fact that you don't normally automatize it, that you open it once in a while and it's a manual operation. Maybe also the cleaner are not experienced in having that single night open. So they might not be aware or maybe they miss that task. So the fact that you can automatize it through a tool that will also help with the communication and streamline the overall communication in between the teams.
Right. So that's where these tools really come in handy. No, please name.
I can tell you a funny one. We once took on a 45 apartment block of flats next to Heathrow. And in our strategies, we always start pricing really low the day we're ready to go to the property to get the bookings in and then get the reviews in. And then we try to push it up. So as usual, we cut prices and within half an hour, we had 20, 30 people at the property. Cleaners weren't ready. Beds weren't made. The spider blew all the birds. So yeah, make sure to know what's going on the ground and maybe double check what you're being told before going crazy with sales.
Yes, these are definitely some good things to learn from. Oh, that's really great. And I see how this hour is just flying by. It just gives me a feeling that this has to be done more often because there's tons of information that we can learn from here. So with that, maybe I'll give a final question before we go to the questions that have been put forward by by the audience. So it says, not everything has to be overhauled to make a difference. What are some last minute tweaks or quick wins property managers can still implement, whether operational, pricing related, or guest facing, that can have a meaningful impact this high season?
I have to get back to my first topic, which would be like trying to monitoring the market. If you have a tool that will be automatic and it will be easy enough, but in case you don't, it's also makes sense just going to the OTA and simulate a booking yourself to see what's that supply on the specific day. So you can get the sense of what's the supply and you can deduce what was the demand from. So like proactively going and look for that information if you don't have a tool that can provide.
Right. Great tip. Any other last tweaks, things we can do before the high season comes?
They make sure your description's up to date, make sure your photos look good. Photos are what sell the properties. So if you don't have good photos, and try and get some, even if you've got a good Android or iPhone, you can usually get quite good shots and make sure everything looks nice and tidy. And yeah, take a last look at your pricing and your minimum stay strategy, which is often left off, to make sure those are what they should be.
Yeah, and I think I would just say too, right? Like I think we're so busy working on a daily basis to like welcome guests and make sure a home is cleaned and it's ready for someone. And then it's like, okay, great, they're here, everything's good. And then we're prepping for the next guests. And so I think I would say, like, use reviews that you're getting in as sort of like a way to consistently improve what you're doing, what your team's doing, and the experience that your guests have, right? So if there's something that's consistently mentioned in those, make sure that, like, there's if people consistently are saying there's an issue with the coffee maker, right? Like, make sure that then you add that to your checklist for your team that's going in and going to be preparing those properties to make sure that they're actually testing that. So maybe things that you might not normally look at, just be really aware of what's happening and take what you're getting post stay and continually try to, improve that for future stays.
Great. Great. Yeah, these are some great tips. So with that, with all this experience and information that we were able to listen to, I would like to go to the questions from the audience. I see that some questions have already been answered. Maybe Silva, is there a set that we would be able to? Yeah, because I think some of them have been answered, but some of them haven't yet. I just see right now one coming in. Maybe I'll just start off with that one, and if there's any others that I should dive into, we can look into that. So one of the questions is, and this one is for Price Labs. It says how will you balance the promotions that you have on the OTAs, VS versus the dynamic pricing coming from Price Labs?
Good questions. I'll do a mix. I suggest a mix of both. Why? I would suggest everything in Price Labs because it's easier doing everything from the same platform. But in the marketing wise, it will be better in the OTA itself, right? Because many times you get the strike through the price, which helps for marketing, so gives a sense of offer to the guest. So why don't applying them in the OTA directly? I will say maybe you can do a portion of some of them in Price Labs and the rest in the OTA. So I would say a combination of, obviously, watching out to don't exaggerate.
Alessandro, also like length of stay discounts can't be done in Price Labs, right? I know you've got LOS pricing now, but it might be good to do some length of stay discounts on the OTAs directly. And then what you need to bear in mind is that you have to look at your minimum price that you set in Price Labs and then multiply it by the discount. Sorry, OTA clearly means online travel agency or channel, like Airbnb.com and so on. So you need to take the minimum price you're setting on Price Labs and then apply the biggest combination of discounts, because you could have several promotions and you have to look at the total discount to get it. And then make sure that for that length of stay, you're still profitable, because you don't want to just end up, getting revenue, but actually ending up losing money because your costs, your changeover costs and so on are getting up.
Exactly. Great point. Because if you do the promotion in Price Lab, then you're not going to go lower than your minimum, while if it's applied after in the OTA itself, it could. So what you say, it's making complete sense. There is also another question that I've noticed that I would like to take, which is from Tammy, mentioning what are the internal occupancy factor to look at, while I was talking about them before. So yeah, it's another one at the beginning. How do we consider the internal occupancy? We consider it in relation to the booking window, meaning we have this table, we call it the occupancy-based adjustment table. So basically on the vertical, you have the percentage of occupancy, 10%, 20%, 30%, 100%, what it is. On the horizontal, you have the time periods. So 1 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to 30, you decide the time period. So if you go, for example, if in the next 10 days, your occupancy is 20% or lower, X% adjustment. If a month to 2 months out, you're already on 80%, Y% adjustment. So you want to discount when you are empty last minute, and you want to increase pricing when you're full far out. So you maximize occupancy last minute and you maximize revenue far out. So that's also progressively going once we progress with the days. That's the way we approach the internal occupancy in relation to pricing. Happy to explain more about this if you want to reach out to us.
Right. And then there's another question, which is at the beginning, and I think it touches a bit on everything. It might be able to be answered from different angles. So it says, is there a way to strategize how to get more bookings without being cheaper and attracting the wrong guests, so that we can scale or have more bookings in low season? Any thoughts? And then it says, I already use PL, so I guess that means Price Labs, but it's kind of a minefield, and the market and is constantly changing. So question is, without being cheaper and attracting the wrong guests, so that we can scale more bookings during the low season. Any thoughts on that?
My point of view here would be, okay, if, I think there are three components here. With PriceLabs, we can control both. Two, sorry. We can control the pricing and we can control the minimum stay charges. If you're already cheap on pricing, meaning cheaper than your competitors, then you might, you don't have much margin to play with it. If you have very strict minimum stay rules, then you can make them more flexible in relation to the market behavior again. So they might be help to increase the bookings. But if those two components are already like kind of accomplished, then you should focus on the product, on the marketing, on the product that you offer and the OTA and like where you sell it, right? Proving what you're actually offering in terms of, title, description and everything that, to prove what the guests are actually seeing. And together with it, maybe doing some marketing activities, local, working with local agency, always the same more or less things, trying to collaborate with local tours, things like this outside what it is the pricing and itself. Yeah.
It's great. Took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say not all of the same things, but very much so around like look at your minimum stay. So and that's great advice for folks.
Yeah, very good. Very good. All right. So that's a full hour right there. And maybe, just an open final question. Any last thoughts? Anything that that would be really good to share before we wrap up? Well, we touched on, I guess, we touched on a lot of things here. And again, like as I mentioned, there's so much to explore. And I think one thing that was mentioned in between is also just learning from the last year. What are the things that we saw operationally happening? How can we empower our teams? How can we use all these tips with the pricing? Making sure that we have everything in place. So I don't know if there's any final things that we would like to share. Otherwise, I would say thank you, everyone present here in the audience.
We really feedback on whether a webinar in July would be of interest or whether people are too busy. So if you can take a moment to just reply on the link that Silva shared, that would be great.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's good. You're mentioning that. Yeah, there's a link in the chat. Please check it out. And I think it's in the form of a survey. And as I mentioned before, thank you all so much. We really appreciate your attendance. It was very valuable. Thank you, Corinne, Alessandro, and Naeem for answering all the questions. Even the difficult ones were wonderfully answered. So thank you so much, and really looking forward to another time to come together again and to discuss.
Amazing.
Pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks for organizing everything.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Have a nice evening. Thank you.
Have a good evening. Bye bye.